Hey, y'all. Thank you for joining. Hopefully, today this will be pretty painless. Amanda is going to go over the new assessment forms, which are light years better than they have been in the past. Both Amanda and Cece were on a very long, more than a year workforce with the State Unit on Aging, talking about what kind of information do we really need to gather and what kind of information do we not really have to do anymore. How do we make this a lot more user friendly? How do we make this more older adult friendly and maybe low vision friendly? And the final product is awesome. So thank you to Amanda and Cece for being on that workforce for such a long time. And thanks to the state for investing in making the assessment forms better. There are fewer questions than there have been in the past. So I'm going to use this as my plug to say, because there are fewer questions and we've really just kind of dialed into what's the most important information to gather, and because of something called CSTAT, which is an acronym that I don't honestly know what it is a contractual obligation for us to gather the information, the demographic information that is in these. So if we don't meet our CSTAT measures, then there are issues with our contractual obligations to the state, yada, yada, yada. Summarized to say that now that the assessment forms are a lot more streamlined and dialed in, we really do need you to gather the data that is on the assessment forms. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to Amanda, who is going to go through what they look like, changes, what that looks like in Peer Place. And we're a pretty small group, so if you have questions, just shout them out or put them in the chat, and we can just get to them as we go along. So go ahead, Amanda, take it away.
All right. Well, like Erin said, there's been a lot of changes in the assessment forms over the last year, and this is kind of the final culmination of that. To start with, some of the main changes that the SUA completed on our behalf was they really looked at every question and really to determine what was a federal requirement, what was a state requirement, and what was stuff that had kind of trickled into the assessment over the years. So along those lines, there were some changes as far as which assessment and how often redeterminations took place. The nutrition counseling is now able to be completed on a congregate assessment. It's smaller than the in-home or home delivered meals assessment. It does not include the ADLs and IADLs. And so that makes it much easier if there is someone who is coming in for congregate meals and decides that they need to connect with Sally, the registered dietitian. You can just send over the congregate assessment and she has everything she needs to complete that service. And that will hopefully cut down on the number of multiple reassessments needed for that service that fits really well. The question for nutrition counseling on the basic assessment and the caregiver assessment has actually been changed to nutrition education, because there was a little bit of trouble with the new reports that were being run. People were selecting nutrition counseling on those services, and there wasn't the ability to provide that service across the board. There was just way less capacity than was anticipated for that. So nutrition education can be done in a group project or with much less time spent, and provide that service more easily than nutrition counseling. But anyone who requests or needs nutrition counseling can get that as well. The other things that have been changed is that nutrition counseling does not require 6-month reassessments. That didn't really seem to fit very well with the way the service was provided. As is CHORE does not require 6-month reassessments either. because the eligibility for chore is based on inability to perform the chores needed, and chores are supposed to be short-term services.
And Amanda, I'm just going to say, so 6-month reassessments are still required for everything else: case management, home delivered meals. We have some internal voucher programs that require reassessments. So just wanted to say, if it doesn't say that the reassessment requirement has been removed for it and you're used to doing reassessments, then you still need to do a reassessment.
Absolutely, thank you. And again, that requirement is one reassessment in each 6-month period. And so it can look a little bit different than just every 6 months. So that is the requirements on the big changes the state made there. There have also been demographic changes that have come down from the Older Americans Act. We are used to having to click that button in Peer Place to mark that we are rural. That has become kind of an automated behind-the-scenes system in Peer Place. So that should be calculated by zip code, which further shows how important it is to make sure we have zip codes so that we can get credit for our rural clients. The other major change that is taking place is from ACL. It used to be race was determined by one race or two or more multiple races. Now each race, a client can choose multiple races, and that will show up as a multiple indicator. So instead of answering the one question of two or more races, they can actually select as many as they identify with. That will hopefully increase our targeting a little bit, since that's extra identifications, but we'll see how that actually works out. And that took place as of October 1. The other big change that has kind of been trickling in for the last little bit is poverty status. We no longer require an actual written down income amount like we did in the past. There is a federal poverty level grid, and clients can choose whether they are above or below the 100% federal poverty level. This is with the exception of the low-income senior dental program assessment, where we do need an actual number written into that box, just because that's a HCPF program and they have different requirements. But for the most part, it is simply at or below poverty, above poverty, or that information was not provided. If we do really want to try and get that item, really need it, as it's a contractual requirement and one of the CSTAT measures. Oh, I went the wrong way. So as far as assessments go, we are mostly working with 4 different groups. The demographics required information is found on the first page of the basic intake, the congregate assessment, and in-home assessment and caregiver. Nutrition screening is again on the congregate assessment or in-home assessment. That's the NSI questions, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. ADLs and IADLs can be found in the in-home assessment, and the caregiver relationship, which is a required field as well, can be found on the caregiver assessment, which will mostly, our providers will mostly only be using that for caregiver support groups. So for basic intakes, you can find these services that are eligible to use the basic intake. It's a little shorter than most of the others. SHIP, of course, nutrition education, reassurance. This is, we are making a move from reassurance that was a one-time aggregate to it needs to be a registered service for each client. And contract transportation will receive a basic intake as well. Our voucher transportation program will look a little different as it has the waivers included on the assessment. So if you see one of those come through and it has a waiver at the end, that one's probably coming to us. So, and the same is true of the dental and vision vouchers. Congregate nutrition assessments, of course, are for nutrition and nutrition counseling, and the in-home assessment form will be for case management, chore, in-home services, voucher, home delivered meals, and care recipients of the caregiver program. Oh, and I just got a message from Carly. There will be specific forms for dental and vision. It will still be different because there's some additional questions about dental services needed and vision services needed. So the SUA, one of the main changes that they have made to the program is they really standardized the first form of the report. It is the same page is the same for each assessment. It is much clearer. It's easier to find the data you're looking for. It is a vertical layout. The required information is spaced in a way that makes a whole lot more sense. Section headers, and it's consistent across all the forms. It's also a whole lot friendlier and feels a lot less government-y. The intro paragraph is just kind of tells people why we are interested in collecting this information and what it is useful for. So one of the other major changes is to the nutrition screening questions. They are a lot clearer. Erica Reinhard, Program Evaluator for the State Unit on Aging, and Leanna really worked with multiple states and ACL to make these clearer, more understandable. And it also includes information at the bottom for if you get a high risk, what should you do for both clients and providers. So this is what the new basic intake form looks like. We have changed each one to have what service is being assessed at the top. So instead of saying basic intake form, it will say like transportation or dental or vision. This is how you can tell the difference between those as well. Pretty much this is all that will be required. There are questions down, or there is a place for the client to sign, which I just noticed wasn't on any of these pictures, but so that's pretty much it. Here is the new income question where the client can really just determine whether it is above or at or below the federal poverty level. And moving forward, we'll change those grids when the new numbers come out each month. Congregate nutrition assessment.
Sorry, you said each month. I just want to say new poverty guidelines come out each year. So don't worry, we're not changing it on you every month.
Thank you. Yep. So here are the new nutrition questions. It's pretty simple looking and much clearer form. So the in-home services assessment, this will be case management and home delivered meals primarily. It's down to just about 4 pages with the frequently asked questions page included as well. ADLs are back to being in the correct order. I think that's been a change that was made to Peer Place as well so that it models it, but I haven't been in to make certain on that. The caregiver assessment, we have removed these 2 additional care recipients because honestly, I really, really hope no one is providing care to 4, because that would be a lot. So pretty much the main question for the caregiver is this provides that information that can link the caregiver to the care recipient. And then we have new frequently asked questions that is included with each of the assessments going out to the client. It kind of is modeled after Boulder County had a beautiful one, so we were able to adapt that statewide. It's easier to read, and it kind of explains to the client why we're asking for this information, what we're going to do with that information, and how that information is protected. And here's that new form. We have completed all of this red with our information, and it includes questions on donation. In that, we have Northwest Colorado Council of Governments was included as the person to make the check out to, as we've had times where our program income comes in and we can't cash the check. So this is pretty much all complete, and this form goes out with each of the assessments. So as far as translating that information into PeerPlace, I'm not going to talk us through the next couple of slides because everybody's kind of working with different assessments and in different places, but it's pretty well laid out. Erica very kindly put together what group of information and on which slide that information is entered. So pretty much everything is in order with the exception of the mailing address. As we all know, that's further down in the PeerPlace windows, but was too confusing to clients to separate out that information. And here's the race boxes where multiple boxes can be checked, and that should be updated in PeerPlace so that that's readily available to enter as well. Pretty much same thing. Congregate, again, that first page looks pretty much identical, so that makes that easier to enter. This main difference is the nutrition screening. That will go on that NSI screen that sometimes disappears in PeerPlace. And you got to kind of hunt for it, but that's where that goes. We also have the client insurance question on the assessment so that clients can let us know whether they are on Medicaid, Medicare, or private insurance. And that can all be entered as below. In-home assessment, pretty much all the same. It does include a primary emergency contact. We are not requesting the secondary emergency contact or the power of attorney. That information tends to change a lot, so our assessments, that has been removed. And then other eligibility, here's the question for chore, and that's a free-form text. And we have restructured the cognitive impairments question so it makes more sense instead of alphabetical. Caregiver, again, looks very similar. And mailing address goes into that mailing address button at the bottom. That is pretty much it. All of the new assessments can be found on our website under the For Professionals tab. We are, when I say we, CC is working very hard on our beautiful new Spanish translated assessments. We'll have those available by the end of the month. I'm hoping sooner than that, but want to give us a little bit of wiggle room on that. And then this, of course, is going to adjust the wait list priority document, and we'll get that sent out to you once that's completed as well, probably late November. Other than that, any questions? What can I help with?
Amanda, I'm going to add to, there is some changes in the way units are entered into PeerPlace. Everybody should have received a Word document that the state put together on which services now, it's mostly just the ones that had 1 hour is 1 unit. They're now using 15-minute increments. So instead of saying, I mean, if you case management as an example, I worked with somebody for 45 minutes, but I'm going to put an hour because we're going to round up. Now you actually will put 0.75 because that is changes at the federal level, and that information as far as those units, which were per hour, now are 15-minute increments. You add that into PeerPlace that way. With this group, I think that it's probably case management who's going to, it's really just case management. We've also got caregiver, but that's not really anybody here. Nutrition, education, that's our RD, legal assistance. And then we do have one provider who's providing chore. And chore also will be 15-minute increments. One more word of warning. Amanda is going on vacation next week. Very exciting. We're very excited for Amanda. That does mean that she's not going to be available on the 15th. I don't anticipate people having issues with these new assessment forms. Actually, that's for last month anyway. And the changes to the hours didn't take place until October. So I don't really anticipate anybody having issues. But if you do, and you get an away message from Amanda, and you ask me about it, you will also get an away message from me because I'll be at the Roaring Fork Valley Senior Law Day. So if there's any major meltdowns as you try to enter your information into OASIS and or PeerPlace on or next week, if it's a big issue, then we can take care of it on Monday, whatever the date is on that, the 17th, 18th. So
looks like the 18th, yeah. Well, I think that's all I have.
Thanks again to all the work that UNCC have done to make these way better of assessment forms. Hopefully y'all also will find that these assessment forms are much friendlier, both for you and for our clients. And obviously we are always available if you need any help. Okay, thanks y'all.